Ha ha ha! Mine is an evil laugh.
Hello! Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a mukbang. If you're not sure what a mukbang is, it is basically I will be eating and talking, and that's kind of it. I eat and talk. So today's topic is going to be some ghost stories. These are true ghost stories from my past. First, let's try this cake with the caramel sauce. Yep. Oh yeah. That's good. Follow that up. Trying the latte. It's still pretty hot. I don't know. Smells good. It's my Buffy mug.
I'm Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
What up, Slayers? My favorite cup. Yeah. It's like pumpkin pie in a cup.
Like, hell yeah!
All right, let's get into the stories, shall we? So you might know, I've had medium abilities forever.
I see dead people.
But I didn't always know the term. Like, I didn't know that there was a word medium or mediumship or anything. Growing up, I didn't know. I was kind of always haunted, if you will. I've always lived in a space that had spirits and some worse things. But I didn't really know anything about the paranormal. Not really. Like, I didn't know there was, like, science behind it. Like, I didn't know there was such a thing as a paranormal investigator, ghost hunters, or any of that stuff. Like, I didn't know this was before the age of, like, the internet. Basically, all I really knew was that there were ghosts and, like, demons and angels. Like, I knew that those were things. I knew that they existed. I really didn't know anything beyond that. Cake. So some of the, like, one of the earliest memories I have, I don't know how old I was, but when I told my mom about this, she said I was probably about 2, in the place we were living. But I remember I have this vivid memory of like a bunch of spirits. Like, we're talking at least a minimum of like 6 plus spirits in my room, and they were like, I wouldn't say they were. I don't know if they were necessarily malevolent, but they weren't nice either. Um, they would sort of tease me, and like to get a negative reaction from me. So obviously, they were scary to me. They would be picking up my toys and throwing them around, or putting them in my face, trying to get me to cry and to scream and to make a fuss. And when I did, they would laugh. I remember them laughing, and then my mom would, obviously come in and ask me what was wrong, and I'd tell her, and of course, most parents, they would say, oh, she would just say, oh well, it was just a nightmare, but I wouldn't be asleep when I saw these things. So there was this one spirit that was kind of with me, unbeknownst to me, really, I think, most of my life, right up until my early 20s. And he would this was I would say, my first experience and my biggest experience with, it's not possession because it's a human spirit, but channeling. So when a spirit kind of comes through you, I didn't know that's what that was. Like I said, I don't, at this point, I was really young and I really knew nothing about spirits at all. So it was this little boy spirit that would always sort of pop in. Like I would black out. And people around me, when there were people around me anyways, so I would black out and then come to sometime later, and the people around me would be just looking at me like, what the actual fuck? And I would have no idea why. And then they would tell me, you started talking like a little kid, you started playing with toys, I was either asking for my mommy or saying, I was afraid of getting into trouble from my mommy or something like that. Like I would be not really walking around so much, but I'd be like sitting on the ground, maybe playing with toys. My voice would change, my eyes would change. So that's an example of channeling, but I think it was much stronger when I was younger versus now. Like when I see other mediums who have channeled, who have had a spirit come through them, their experience seems to be different from mine. The ones I've seen anyways have been, I don't know, more intense, and maybe that's because they're channeling adult spirits. One time that I remember, I can't remember if we were just visiting my mom's friend, or if we were staying there for a little bit. I don't remember. But I do remember that there was a female spirit there that had committed suicide. It said that she hung herself, but I remember I was playing around with some kids in the house, and I kind of went over the sofa, like not over it, but like I was bent over it, like I was running, and I kind of just fell over it, and I remember seeing a giant pool of blood, and of course I screamed and freaked out. I was little, I was a kid. So I don't know if that was from the spirit that had committed suicide or had said to commit suicide by hanging, or if she committed suicide a different way, or if I had seen residual of a murder. I don't know. I use the term residual energy. If you're not familiar with what residual energy is, it's basically a recording. It's just recorded energy. A past event that's like recorded, and you just see it over and over. Or you can see it only at certain times, but it's like on a schedule. So if it happens, say, on March 25th, but at, say, at midnight. So it's something you might only experience every year on March 25th at midnight, and just for like a fleeting moment or whatever. Another example of just like generic, I guess, residual energy is one where, again, before I knew what a medium was, I thought hearing voices, I thought I was just crazy, but in this one apartment I lived in, so every morning I would hear what sounded to me like a mother, I would say probably a grown son. He sounded grown anyways, but they were arguing. And it was auditory for me. So in a past video I talked about being clairaudient, and usually that means hearing it in your head. Whereas in this case, it was auditory, so it was outside. So it was like I could hear, like somebody outside kind of thing. But I would always hear at the same time, and it would always be the same, the exact same conversation. Even though I couldn't make out the words, I could tell they were arguing. You could tell by tone they were arguing. The same conversation, or argument, I guess, over and over and over. So to me, at the time, I didn't know what it was. Looking back, I would say what was happening was that these two people in real life who were living got into a major argument, and the energy was so intense that it actually imprinted and caused sort of a residual haunting. So long after they'd either moved or the argument was over, whatever, that energy was still there. It was never cleared out, and so it just repeated over and over and over. But that's sort of that's an example of like sort of a generic kind of residual haunting, if you will, where there's not an actual spirit present, it's just energy that can be cleared out, usually with like sage or some kind of ritual. Oh, that's good. That's so good. So there was another time, this is going back in time now, when I was a kid. So in this apartment, I think I was probably there the ages of, I think I was 11 or 12 to about 15. And this place was haunted by two different things. One was a human spirit and one was a demonic. I won't really be going into the demonic one right now. I'm going to save that for another video. What made this situation, I guess, really twice as bad was that not only was there a demonic spirit there, so that's already going to cause all kinds of darkness and havoc. That's what they do. But the human spirit that was there was also, I don't know that he was necessarily malevolent, but he was definitely, he was a grumpy guy. He wasn't someone that I had actually seen too often. I had seen him, but it was actually my mom who, I forget what she was doing. I think she was watching TV or something and saw something out of the corner of her eye. And when she looked, she saw this older spirit, this older gentleman spirit. He walked across the hall into my room. It turns out that my room had been his room when he was alive and living there, and that was the room he died in. So this was just an all-around sort of terrible situation, because I am actually bipolar. And as a teenager, that, with all the hormones and all the chemical crap that goes on in your brain, plus I was on medication that they found out later on actually gives teens specifically suicidal tendencies. So this is an antidepressant that, when given to teenagers, actually causes their depression and their suicidal tendencies to get worse. They didn't know that at the time when I was taking it. So I'm manic depressive. I'm on meds that are actually counteracting me getting better. And I'm living in a house with a demon and a grumpy spirit. He was a dark dude. Not evil, but not nice. He was not a nice man. My bedroom, anyways, where I spent the majority of my time when I was, when I wasn't alone in the house, time sort of locked away in my bedroom. I was kind of marinating. Gross, I know. But I was sort of marinating in his negative energy. So it was causing my depression to, get 10 plus times worse. Humans, just people, pick up on spiritual energy. Even if they're not aware of it, even if they don't believe in it, they can pick up on that energy, whether you know it or not. And whether they mean to or not, they can affect your energy and your mood, and have an effect on, your thoughts and things like that. Maybe, so if a spirit was really depressed when they died, or really angry, malevolent as a person, right? Like we're talking like serial killer or something along that lines, like somebody who, when they were alive, got pleasure, got enjoyment out of hurting others, right? So that would be what I would consider, right? That's a malevolent spirit. With this particular story, was a grumpy guy. He wasn't evil, he wasn't malevolent, and who liked people. Like, this was a guy who was he was kind of a shut-in. With me picking up on his energy, I also kind of became someone who didn't want to socialize or be around anybody. I just wanted to be left alone in my space. And so, of course, that's going to add to my depression as well. I mean, who knows? If I hadn't been in that space, perhaps my depression would never have gotten as bad as it did. I will never know. I will never know. Now, once I did get out of that house, my depression, of course, remained. My bipolar remained. So the bipolar was still there, but I no longer felt like I needed to sort of segregate myself, or I was very, very social. I was living with my boyfriend at the time, and we had friends over all the time. We had parties like every night, and I was right in the thick of it. At that point, I was very extroverted, and I liked being around other people, and I wanted to party. So once I was out of that space, that spirit no longer affected the way I thought and the way I was feeling. He was tied to the apartment, not to me, which spirits can do. Spirits can attach themselves to people, just as they can attach themselves to places. They can also attach themselves to objects, which is where you get haunted objects. Oh, so good. So jumping ahead again, I know I'm kind of going back and forth here, confusing to follow. This was a malevolent spirit who was malevolent in life and was just as bad, if not worse, as a spirit. So I was around 19 or 20, and I was living in... So this is a place I still refer to as this day as the Hole. I mean, this is an area where there was a lot of drugs and prostitution. Like, this was not a good neighborhood, and so it's not really a surprise that this particular spirit was there, because that's the kind of person that he was, because of the type of person he was in life. He was someone who not only did drugs, but he dealt drugs, and I'm not saying those people are bad people. I'm just saying that this guy was someone, he was a bad person. And so he was sort of attracted to feeding off of other people's pain, I guess is what I'm saying. And this was sort of like a hot spot for that.
Oh, you're rude. And you got a bad attitude. Why don't you go watch some Netflix like the rest of us?
So I was there for about a year and a half, which I spent as little time there as I possibly could, because I felt from day one, I felt uncomfortable. Not just uncomfortable, but like I was invading someone else's space. And it was very much an energy of get out. You could tell he wanted to hurt whoever was there. And not, it wasn't something where it was personal, he just wanted to hurt me. And it's not just like with the grumpy guy where he just kind of wanted to be alone in his space. This is someone who, he had decided that this was his territory, the building. The building was his territory. I feel like I happened to live in the unit that he lived in, possibly died in, but he felt like he had decided that building was his. He claimed that was his. And my phone turned off. As I was saying, I think in a way he craved power. This was a big thing for him. He craved power. So when he claimed this space, that was him, taking power over that space. So he would, so I could actually, again, I didn't know what clairaudient was, I didn't know what a medium was, I didn't know any of that, but I could actually hear him like growling, telling me to get the fuck out, because he knew how much that scared me and how uncomfortable I was. And that gave him a sense of power, and he used it all the time. So, I mean, I would be in the shower, and I could see, he was like gross. He would like, I could see him, you know, peeking into the shower as I was trying to get clean. I could see him, and he knew I could see him, and he would smile at me. It was so creepy and so gross. But he knew how much it freaked me out, and so he kept doing it, and you could tell he was getting pleasure off of this. He enjoyed that. I don't get the impression that he was like a murderer in life. Maybe he was, I don't know, but I didn't get any of those mental impressions or anything like that. Again, he was on a power trip. He enjoyed power. He enjoyed instilling fear because of that sense of power. Depression was huge. I went through a huge depression in that space, and I wasn't the only one. As it turns out, there were other people in the building that also who were also experiencing the same thing I was, and going through, considering suicide or even attempting suicide. For me, I had the want to get away from the space as much as I could. I spent a lot of time at my mom's house. I really hated being in that apartment. So I would try to get away from it for as long as I could, whereas some other people went the other way, and they did what I did in the other space, where they just, segregated themselves. They stopped socializing, and they just kind of stayed in their space, stayed in their home. They didn't, they weren't, people would try to come over and knock on the door. They wouldn't answer. They tried to call. They wouldn't answer, right? They just wanted to be left alone. And in some cases, left alone to die. So the same place where I think it was a few months after I left. I can't remember exactly how long, but it ended up going on fire and killing somebody. And I have zero doubt in my mind that this spirit had something to do with it. And that I think he did it on purpose, and I think he did it to hurt people. Obviously, not just to kill the person that died, but to hurt the people who were still in the building, and the person who died, their family. Like, this is someone who just really enjoyed hurting people. Well, even though I still have some cake left, my phone is letting me know that I've rambled on long enough, and that it's time to wrap things up. So thank you for listening to my ramblings. Hopefully you got something out of it. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, and share. And I will see you next time.
Good luck sleeping. Bye.
Itchy underboob. Itchy underboob.